Find the exact value of the x-intercepts of the quadratic function f(x) equals 6x squared plus 3x minus 2. First, observe the expression of the question, x-intercepts of the function. From the graph of the quadratic function, we have known for the x-axis, y-axis, the quadratic function, perhaps here, the graph, perhaps here, perhaps here, perhaps like this. Of course, all of these situations are related to the a coefficient greater than 0, so the graph opens up. But for the negative coefficient of a, all of the graph should be opening downwards, like this, like this, like this, or here, or here. But from the graph, we can figure out for this situation and this situation, we can discuss so-called x-intercepts. For this graph, we have two x-intercepts. For this graph and this graph, you can figure out this graph and this graph has no point of intersection with x-axis, so we cannot discuss so-called x-intercepts of the function for these two situations. For this one, the vertex is just on the x-axis, so we can discuss the so-called x-intercepts, but just one x-intercept for this graph. For this graph, it has two x-intercepts. From the quadratic formula, we can figure out for this function, if f(x) equals 0, that you say this expression equals 0. That you say this 6x squared plus 3x minus 2 equals 0. From the graph, we can figure out for this one, it is possible. That you say all the points on the graph, the y-coordinates cannot be equal to 0. That you say f(x) cannot be equal to 0 anytime. But for this situation and this situation, it's possible for the graph in which the point coordinates, especially specifically, the y-coordinates can be equal to 0. So we can figure out this function equal to 0. We just need to figure out the x roots. That you say the roots are so-called x-intercepts. So for this expression, we just need to figure out the roots. And we have the quadratic formula help us to figure out the x roots. X equals 2a negative b plus minus b squared minus 4ac. This part, it is discriminant. Here a is 6, b is 3, c is 2. We just need to plug in the corresponding numbers into this formula, so we can figure out negative b, negative 3, plus minus b squared, 3 squared, minus 4, a is 6, c is negative 2, denominator, 2 times a is 3, it is 6. So we need to figure out the corresponding solution. 9 minus 24 times negative 2, it should be 9 plus 48 equals 57. So here, under the square root sign, it should be 57. Denominator is 12. So x1 equals negative 3 plus this one over 12. X2 equals negative 3 minus square root sign 57 over 12. This solution and this solution is so-called the corresponding point of intersection between the graph and the x-axis. That you say, perhaps this is the x1, this is x2. Of course, please be careful here. We just need to use this graph to represent the relationship between the graph and the x-axis. This graph does not exactly represent the graph of this function. We just need to know this one is so-called x1, x2. So we can use the quadratic formula to figure out the solution for this equation. Then we can figure out the so-called x-intercepts of this quadratic function.